All right, here we get started. Can you guys hear me all right? Well, um, welcome to today's webinar. I guess I'm going to wait a little bit for everyone to join in. We have about 35 people right now. I'm expecting probably the count will go up to 100 or so. In the meantime, I'm sitting here in my place in San Francisco. I live in the Presidio, which is like a little national park here, and it's kind of quite nice place because in the middle of the forest and there's a view of the ocean, so it's a good energy. It's a good place in nature. So till everyone else joins, what I'm going to ask you to do is just what I'm going to do today is have you send me any questions on Twitter. We're doing this over Hangouts, so because of the way it's set up on YouTube, the easier way than leaving a comment is just doing discussions on Twitter. So any questions you have today is just at Amir Kella. Ask them to me on Twitter. What I'm going to ask you to do right now is just go on Twitter and send a quick hi with this hashtag to everyone in the webinar, so you know who else is there, and so I know who else is attending the webinar today. And I'm going to wait probably a couple more minutes for everyone else to join. Oh, and feel free also to share your share the webinar link with everyone else on your Twitter followers, Twitter list or Facebook or whoever you want to share the webinar link with. I'm expecting, like I said, I'm expecting a couple hundred people today, but I think Google Hangouts can take a little bit more people. So I'm gonna do in the next couple minutes, I'm gonna check that the sound is working correctly. If the sound is not working, or if you are having any problem hearing me or seeing the screen, just add me on Twitter, Amir Kella, and I'll be checking it every minute or so. I have the live Twitter app next to me here, so I'll make sure everything is working correctly. If you have any questions, if you can't hear the sound well, just tweet me there and I'll take care of it. I'm starting to get some hellos in the feed. Hey David, Laith, how's it going? Kenton, Erin, hey guys. Gavin, Mitch, Justin, good to see you guys here. Stephen, cool. It's good to have company here. You know, when it's when you're sitting in your living room doing a webinar, it's good to see the other side of the audience. Probably the next few times, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a proper hangout, so I can invite some people over the webcam and have live discussions with you guys, and maybe even do a little bit of design review. If you have some screenshots, some prototypes, something you want to show me, I'll be happy to do that in the next webinars. So I think we have probably enough people here to get started. We have about 50 people or so. So I'm gonna assume the rest will join us later. So let me start with a quick introduction about what you'll be learning with me in the next 60 minutes or so. I'll be good about timing, so I'll try to end at 8 o'clock sharp in about 55 minutes, and I'll leave 15 to 30 minutes to questions, whatever you guys have. But my hope is that at the end of these 60 minutes, you have a clear idea about how the user experience process works and what you will need to put in place and what the steps you need to go through if you have an idea for a web or mobile app that you're having some pain points from users that you want to act on and design something for, or you've been having an idea about a mobile app that's cool and fun, but you don't know how to take that idea and make it into a prototype and test it with someone. That's what I'm hoping for you to get out of this webinar. I'm going to do my best so you get the best of my knowledge and tips and tricks and so on. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about my story, because I wasn't born a designer. I wasn't educated even as a designer. I was an engineer until probably 2001. I had a traditional computer science education, and I was actually working as a software engineer. And around 2001, I was so if you guys know a little bit about me, I'm originally from Egypt, and I moved here when I was probably 25 years old. So I tell people that I'm made in Egypt and assembled in America. So I was in Egypt until 2001, and I was an engineer, and then I found myself gravitating more toward front-end development, and then I was gravitating more and more toward studying the cognitive side of interacting with a product and why people like some products and don't like other products. So I decided to do some graduate studies in user experience and human-computer interaction. It was actually not like a conscious decision. I wanted to do first computer graphics, so I thought that's the coolest thing to do, to work on special effects for ILM and Digital Domain and these companies. And a happy accident happened when the lab that I was working for, computer graphics, ran out of funding, and I found myself looking for another lab, research lab to work for, and I found kind of like my match at the Human-Computer Interaction Lab at the University of Maryland, where I worked for 3 years doing research on usability, user experience, information visualization, web apps, and so on. And I did a lot of research around mobile applications, especially photo browsing. So I ended up joining Microsoft as a product manager later on. And throughout all these years, even though my education was, I was well-rounded in the academic side of user experience, I didn't really find a process that I can say, oh, this is an end-to-end design process that I can understand and I can work with and I can tell people how to work with. So working through my career at Microsoft, I designed a couple of products. We launched products for designers, but I was still like reading a lot of books, watching a lot of videos, talking to a lot of people, interviewing lots of designers, and I didn't, like, everyone had their own process, so I can kind of formalize a framework. After Microsoft in 2007, I went and consulted with lots of startups. I helped build about 13 products in 3 years. So some of these products have been actually acquired so far, like Delve Networks has been acquired, Talent Spring has been acquired, actually SideReel has also been acquired, but I also built products for Shape Magazine. I built Blist, which is now called Socrata, which is an open government data startup. And throughout these 3 years, I started more formulating the framework that I was using to design products. And throughout studying and researching and applying and working with companies, I was able to find the right step-by-step process that's that not just me can apply, but I can teach it to others, and they can take it and apply it to their process as well. And in the beginning of working with these companies, it would take us several weeks to go from idea to a prototype. And what I found is by bringing everyone from these companies, the founders, the engineers, the business people, whatever the founding team is, and basically locking them down in a meeting room for 5 days straight, we would be able to get so much done in 5 days that companies would take other companies about a couple of weeks, if not a couple of months to do, because we're really diving deep into something and we're not letting all the other things distracting us. So when I stopped working with startups, I still work with startups right now, more on the consulting side, more on the advisory side, but not on the consulting side. But I stopped working on these startups in 2010, and I started working on Kinotopia and all the other products that I have now. And probably in an upcoming webinar, I'm going to share with you all the secrets about how I launched that in 3 hours and how I made it profitable and how I grew it and so on. It's been an amazing ride so far. But going back to the story, I started looking at how I can teach that framework to other people so that when someone wants my help and they want to learn how to design their own product and they want it step by step, they don't need to go and read 10 books and watch hours and hours of endless interviews and conference videos and so on, but they can know in like a couple of hours how they can go from idea to prototype. And like I said, I've been fortunate enough to have worked with some of the best startups in the Valley, going from Ustream to Gameattain to Bliss to Shape Magazine, Sidereel, several of these startups, and the guys from Docverse that were acquired within 1 year after helping them design their product. They were acquired actually by Google. Rich Relevance is another company that's doing basically taking the recommendation engine of Amazon and making it available for other companies like Overstock and Buy.com and so on. VBrick, they have an amazing video platform. ClerkDogs was a video recommendation engine that's crowdsourced. Colligent is doing a lot of media analytics for advertisers and brand managers. And all these companies basically use the same process that I'm going to teach you today to go from the idea, an idea for a feature or an idea for an entire product, and make it available as a prototype that they can test or even launch it as is. So before starting about the process, there are a couple of myths about user experience that I want to demystify here, because people first think that user experience is kind of like a creative process. And I want to draw the line between what user experience is and what design is. So the entire design process includes user experience, but it also includes visual design the same way creating a building includes architecture and includes interior design. So architecture for a building is what user experience is for a product, and visual design is for a product what interior design is for a building or an apartment. So the process of designing a building, the same way the process of designing a product involves thinking step by step through a process that you can repeat over and over. It doesn't require you to have these creative visual skills. In fact, if you are a visual designer, you might be inclined to jump directly into Photoshop and start sketching and designing pixels before you actually think through the process of why this design needs to happen that way or another way. So in other words, if you are good with a tool, you tend to think with that tool. If you're not good with a specific tool, grab a pen and paper, and that would be the best way for you to start thinking about that process. So there is part of the design process that is creative, but the UX side of the process is actually very analytical, very sequential, and repeatable. So you can apply it over and over to design any kind of product, and it works, and you don't have to have creative skills for that. The second myth is it takes a long time to design a product. People think about a product to be designed in 6 months or 12 months. And this used to be in the good old days. Even when I worked at Microsoft, it took us a release cycle of 3 years to come up with a new product and launch it. And that was taking a lot of time. So instead, as I started working with more startups in the past few years, I found that the more we shrink the process into like a 5-day deep dive, and actually I realized that the guys at Google Venture Labs, Design Labs, they're using a lot of the Kinetopia products that we have, but also using a very similar process where they dive deep into the process. This is something that I apply not only in my design philosophy, but in my entire life. If I want to get something done, I eliminate all the distractions and I dive deeply into it, because that's the best way to do it. So it doesn't take a long time to design a product, especially if you want to come up with like a minimum viable product that you want to launch quickly. If you can focus your time, if you currently have a job and you can take a week off, you have this idea on the side that you want to work on, in my opinion, is much more efficient to go and have a week off and finish that idea and then go back to work than to work on that idea an hour or two a day for a month or two. You're going to get much further, much faster. So whenever you can do a deep dive into anything, especially in design, do it. If you have a co-founder, if you have a technical team, if you're a product manager and you have your team, block a week and go into a meeting room, reserve a meeting room for a week or an offsite, and work with them on getting that step-by-step process that I'm going to show you today. And the last myth is that you need to hire expensive designers to have a good product. You might need to hire a designer at the end of the UX process to make it look good for you, to put the visual skin on it, but you don't need to hire them early on to think about what the user experience will be. And again, we drew that line between what user experience is and what visual design is. And the fact is, this is something that I found over and over in my own experience. The more you are specific about what you want the designer to design, the better results you will get, and the less you will spend on the design, because the designer will know exactly what to do for you. All right, so if you have any questions so far, again, the questions will be asked on Twitter. I'll be reading the questions from Twitter and be answering them here. So far, I'm seeing more people. Hey, Victor, Kevin, Tim, Callan. I'm seeing more people joining us here. So without further ado, if you have any questions, ask them away on Twitter, and I'll jump into the process, the 7-step process right away. So the process starts with writing user stories, drawing system maps, then creating flow diagrams, and mapping the attributes of the system you're creating, then coming up with requirements, sketching and prototyping, then testing the prototype and iterating. So the first step is user stories. User stories is what I generally use to capture the general pain point of, or an existing pain point of a customer. So I write 2 types of stories. The first story is the existing state of the customer and their interaction with a product and their pain points and the situation they're in. The second user story that I write is I imagine a magical solution that already exists, and I try to figure out how that customer will use it to get the result or to avoid the pain or to get somewhere faster. So let's say, for the sake of working on this today, I'm going to come up with an example that I've actually been working on and off for a couple of months, actually probably several months now. So when I was working on one of my products, I realized it's difficult to find an appropriate user tester or a beta tester to interview or to give my product to and test with them. The traditional way is for someone to go on Craigslist and post requests for people to come and do a study. But the problem with that is that you're not really filtering out the people. So if I want to interview, let's say, product managers working in design agencies, it's sometimes hard to reach these guys on Craigslist. And if I post a random ad on Craigslist, it's going to be difficult to get people to apply for it if I cannot filter out and know in advance what they are, where they're coming from, and what kind of background do they have, and what kind of other applications they use. So basically, I have to get the people, put them in a survey, and get less and less people as they go through the survey. So I thought, why don't create a marketplace for people to find other people to test their apps? So in my head, there will be 2 user stories, but the main user story will be the entrepreneur or the app creator, someone like you who wants to go and find what are the best users to test their app with. So I'm gonna go on Craigslist, I'm gonna post the ad, and I'm gonna wait for people to apply, and I'm gonna get a lot of people applying. Maybe a lot of them are, unemployed, looking for ways to make money if I'm putting like a reward for people coming and attending the user study. and then I have to go filter them, and that's taking me a lot of time. So one of the pain points is too much time. The other pain point is inaccurate applicants and a lot of people that I have to go through, and maybe at the end I will get one or two of them that I can run the test with, which is not good enough. So that's a user story that summarizes the pain point of the existing pain point of the customer. My customer in this case is the entrepreneur or the product manager in the company or anyone who creates an app. Now, if I rewrite the user story with like the magical solution, and that magical solution, right now I don't know what it is, I just know that it exists, and I'm going to imagine that it exists, I'm going to rewrite the story with it. So I'm going to say the entrepreneur comes to the system, they enter certain criteria for the people they want to run the study with, and they will get a list of results. They will contact these people, and many of them will reply, and then the entrepreneur will have between 10 and 15 people to run the study with. Notice that I haven't really talked much about how the system works. I didn't get into the detail. In fact, the more you get into the detail early on, the more confused you'll get and the more delayed you'll get in that design process. So the design process typically top-down, and at the top level, the earlier working through the design, the more top level you need to be. So you need to be thinking at a higher level. The solution works generally like this, but don't get distracted in the detail. Don't get distracted about what's a radio button versus a checkbox. Don't get too detailed about how certain feature works. Just stay high level. So that's an example about how I rewrite one user story from the before state to the after state, before the magical solution and after the magical solution. Now, having written that these user stories, sometimes you write 2 or 3 user stories, sometimes you need to write 5 to 10 user stories. And sometimes I get asked, how many user stories do you really need? The right answer here is write as many user stories as you need to capture all the interactions around your system and all the situations that the people you're going to deliver your solution to will be using it for. So in my case, again, going for the audience that the entrepreneur wants to reach, I can tell that there is also another persona, which is the user tester, the person who's sitting at the end looking for, someone who's like a beta tester, someone who's always excited about new products. They want to test new products before they're out on the market. So from that perspective, I need to write another user story for that person before the magical solution, after the solution. Before the product, they would probably be doing a lot of searches on Craigslist and sending a lot of emails to people who are posting their studies on Facebook, on Craigslist. But in the second case, this person will fill out their profile once. They will fill out how many apps they use, their favorite apps, their age, their gender, their work history, and so on. And that's it. They will actually start getting emails from my system whenever someone wants to reach out to them and wants them to test their app. So having written these stories, the second step for me is to start creating a system map. And if you're familiar with, if you come from a technical background, system map is kind of like an anti-relationship diagram, like what databases, DBAs or database administrators call an ERD. And that basically describes the entities or the main objects in my system, or to put it grammatically, the nouns in my system. So if I look at the user stories, I'll find them always gravitating around the company or the entrepreneur who's posting the study. That's one noun, the study itself, and the user or the tester. So these are the main objects or entities in my system. And each entity can have sub-entities, like a company has profile, a user also has a profile, a study has requirements, what I'm gonna need for people to come in and do. It has surveys, it has applicants, which are the users that I accept into the study. It also has a status, has it been complete, or is it still running, or is it closed? The company as well can have a profile that has the list of studies that they've done and the list of studies that they're looking for people to do, and so on. So I understand to create that diagram, that's the system map. And to create that system map, you need to highlight the nouns. Like basically, I take a highlighter. When I write the user stories, I do a lot of my work on paper first so that I can avoid being distracted by the pixels and the code and everything on the laptop, and of course the browser and Facebook and all the other things. So I do a lot of my work on paper. And I write these user stories on paper. Then I take a highlighter and I start highlighting these all these nouns and verbs in my user stories. I highlight the nouns in yellow and the verbs in green, and then I start creating that system map to kind of create the relationships between the entities and how they act on each other and relate to each other. So that would be the system map for your system. Now the next thing to create is a flow diagram, and a flow diagram is basically how, when you imagine your system, what are the main components of your system. So my system that I'm imagining is a place where companies would go and fill out a company profile, and then users will go and fill out their end user profiles. The users in this case are the testers, the beta testers. And then the company will post a study, will create a new study, will fill out the study information, and then when the user comes back, they will, let's say the user receives an email that there are some studies that match their profile. The user comes back and they see a list of all these studies. They can click to preview a study, and then they can apply to it. So I start by creating blocks, basically, and each block outlines a state in the system or a step in the system. So if the system map was like equivalent to the ERD or the entity relationship diagram, I hope I'm not getting too technical with you here, but it helps if you have that technical background, you can map it to this. And this is more of a state diagram here. So it describes the state of where the user is in the system and how do they transition from one state to another. If you have, if you've seen some of our Kinotopia prototyping tutorials, you notice that all the time I'm always designing these state diagrams between different screens of the system, between different components and different steps, and how people can move from one to another. So when I move from the system map to the flow diagrams, I start creating these blocks that are probably one level of detail lower than the system map, where now instead of taking the company and the main entities around it and the user and the main entities, I'm digging deeper into the steps that each of these entities will go through to interact with each other. So in this case, I have a sign up login page, and I have a main page where it's like the landing page for my site where users can go sign up and log in, and then if they're a company, they have a company profile. If they're users, they have a user profile. And then the user can have the list of studies they're attending. The company can have the list of studies they are posting. The company can create a new study, and they can invite maybe users to the study. The same way the user can can view a study and apply to it. A company can also view a list of applicants to the study. So again, I'm creating, in my mind, these will probably translate at some point to screens, but putting them in this step-by-step process will help me as I'm creating the screens later to be able to walk through these screens and validate each step along the way. So the system that I'm building here, this kind of product design blueprint, each step helps me build on it the next foundation and also helps me validate the previous step. So this step will help me a lot in kind of doing the walk through the different screens when I get to the sketching of the interface. Then the attribute mapping. So for attributes, I'm trying to figure out for each entity in the system map, the company, the study, the user, what are the different attributes that I need to provide, that I need to design the features for, that I need to have fields for. So for example, a company has a name, a URL, a logo, and address. A user has a name, email, password, and so on. A study has a title, a description, a location. So what I'm doing is that in my head, I'm trying to figure out what is everything that can describe a company or any attribute that is associated with a company or can help me in designing the system that is relevant to the system that I'm trying to create here. So a logo, the company logo, is something that the user might want to see to kind of get an idea about, if they know this company beforehand. Like if Pepsi Cola is I think it's called Pepsi now, not Pepsi Cola. If Pepsi is posting a study about, they want someone to test the new product, if the person sees the logo, that's going to reinforce the image in their head. Same thing, product description, what product they're working on, and so on. All these things will help the user get a good idea about the company they're applying for. Same thing, the user here has the basic stuff, which is their username, email, password, but they also have all the demographic information about their education, their occupation, and maybe also even some further data about the application that they enjoy using and what other websites they pay for and so on. So if I'm running a study on, a new design tool, I can hire people who use other design tools so I can get their perspective about the difference between what I'm designing and the experience with what they're using. So my next step here is just list all these attributes. List as many as you can. If you don't end up finding some that end up not finding all of them relevant to your system, that's fine. You can delete them later. But don't dwell too much in each step here. The point here is to go through the steps as fast as possible, but as comprehensive as possible. But don't take too much time in each. You can always go back to each step and add more information. It's likely that as you go through the list of screens, you might find other attributes that you need to add here, so you're going to come back and add them. So don't dwell too much in each one. Keep the momentum going. The next step will be, after coming up with all these attributes, is to create screens and requirements. So from the attributes, I'm going to figure out what are the list of screens that I want to have in this product, so I can basically cover the end-to-end experience for each user. And for each of these screens, I'll validate the user path through them by finding out the user flow here. So for my system, I'm going to have a main screen, I'm going to have a sign-up/login screen, I'm going to have the company profile screen, the study screen. Now I can decide later on if I want to have the company profile at the top and the list of studies at the bottom on the same page, but I don't need to make that design decision right now. I also have the new study page, have the list of studies for the user and the list of studies for the company, and you get the idea. So from this user flow diagram, I'm going to create the list of screens here. Now when it comes to creating the screens themselves, what I like to do is, and I get asked this question a lot, what's the best way for me to be a good UI designer? If I have never designed a product before, how do I know how to sketch UI, how to prototype a UI? And there's always this quote that comes to my mind from Picasso, that good artists copy and great artists steal, and great designers copy and steal as well, but steal in a good way, because they can steal the inspiration, but not just the feature itself or the design itself. So I have this habit that I almost do on a daily basis. I go to one of these sites, patterntap.com, dribble.com, and mobilepatterns.com. I pick one of these sites each day, and I go and take an interface that I like, or an interface from an app that's gaining a lot of traction, and I copy it. I spend an hour copying an interface, and I copy it for several reasons. The first one is that I'm getting my hand going copying someone else's work that I admire, and I find as I copy someone's work, it becomes easier for me to start doing my own work as well, and like it eases me into the momentum of design. The other thing is, as I'm copying something, I'm building my visual vocabulary. I'm building the screens in my head. I have this rich pattern repository in my head, and rich UI repository that I can tap into later on and be able to design what I want. So yeah, when I'm designing a specific product, I would go to these sites and I would create something that I would call a design inspiration board, or some people call it a mood board. What this board is, and typically it used to be you print out a lot of screens and hang them on the walls and find whatever you like in them and circle it or highlight it. But what I do right now is I have an Evernote notebook, and I have a lot of these design inspirations tagged by the product that I was working on at the time that I collected them. So I collect a lot of screenshots, and I don't do it only when I have a product that I need to work on, but I do it also when I like regularly, so I can be still building that mental repository of visual interfaces, and also a good notebook in my Evernote that has everything that I liked in the past weeks or months or years. So my advice to you is to become a good UI designer. Find good interfaces that you like. Go on Dribbble and find the top voted UIs and copy them. Open Keynote and copy them. Open a notebook and sketch them, and keep like a sketch notebook where you copy interfaces a day. You'll find that as you do this for week in and week out, you will build that repository. You'll build that kind of skills. So next step is, people think that once you have the list of screens in mind, you're going to go into Photoshop and you're going to start designing these screens right away. I actually skip the step and leave it until the very, very end. And a secret about me, I don't know how to use Photoshop very well. I'm actually not a visual designer. That's why I'm using Keynote most of the time, and I give the Keynote prototypes to designers that I hire on Dribbble or on Elance to make them look prettier in Photoshop if I need to. But most of the time with the new flat design movement and flat UI, you don't even need a visual designer. All the stuff you can do in Keynote, they can go into the final product. So the high-level sketches are basically sketches that I draw with like a thick marker. And for a reason, I draw them with a thick marker on a piece of paper so that I cannot actually draw the details inside them. The thickness of that marker prevents me from jumping into the detail too soon. By the way, if I'm going too fast or I'm going too slow, tweet me, tell me if the speed is good, if the sound is good, if the pace is right, and if you have any questions. So again, I start my design process by sketching, or my screen design process by sketching all these screens that I need in a blocky way, in kind of like a very crude way, because I don't want to get lost in the detail. I create basically the general outline, and sometimes I draw them with like black marker. Other times I draw them with like thick gray marker, so I can draw on top of it with a thinner marker once I start getting into the detail. My secret weapon, I haven't told many people about this, but my secret design weapon is an old ThinkPad that I've had for many, many years. It's a ThinkPad tablet. It's an X41 tablet, and it comes with a free app called Windows Journal, and all the sketches that you see here, all the diagrams that were created on that tablet. I had this tablet way, way before iPads, and even when I have my iPad, I still use that tablet to design my UI, because it gets you the right output pretty quickly. On the iPad, I use an app called Notability. This app also allows me to sketch these interfaces and share them with people and get feedback and highlight and generate PDFs and so on. So I go through each screen and I sketch quickly the screen itself, and I also sketch, I take notes on the side and I sketch the transitions between these screens. So I'm kind of taking that flow diagram that we're talking about earlier, and I'm expanding it into a bunch of sketches that show me each screen at a high level. And the design process is basically top-down in what we call progressive refinement. So you will start at a very high level with a thick marker with less detail, and then you'll start refining your ideas and refining your designs and your sketches further. So what I do next is I go and refine these sketches. So as you can see, I can start putting more details here. The filter on the side that someone uses to find different applicants with different criteria or find studies that they want to attend. All these sketches that start here at a very high level, I start drawing them with a much finer marker, and I start adding as much detail as possible to them. And whenever I find something that I need to think about or a transition, so for example, the apply button here will pop up a dialog that asks them if they want to apply for it, and then this will turn into a check mark saying apply. So I can design also a storyboard or interaction around this specific piece on the side. So as I'm getting more and more refined into the sketches, as you can see, I can also sometimes put the thumbnail of the original high-level sketch here, so I can start refining it on the left-hand side, and I can start putting what kind of different UI components I need here. And as you do a lot of the exercises we talked about earlier, how like to copy an interface each day with Keynote, or to sketch an interface each day on your tablet or on a piece of paper or a notebook, copying these interfaces will help you figure out, if I have this scenario, if I want to have the edit, archive, delete scenario, what are the similar interfaces that I saw or sketched or copied that solve that problem, and what's the best interface from them that I can reuse here. So for each screen, I will create different kind of sketches, and one of the things that I don't do very early is that I don't limit myself with the amount of ideas that I'm coming up with. So let's say the landing page. So this is a good case scenario here, where the landing page in this case will target two kinds of customers: the company that wants to post a study and invite people to take, and the person who's coming in to create a profile and find out which studies they can take. And I can have a landing page that has two side-by-side offerings, one for the company and one for the applicant, and I can put the information underneath it. But I can also create a landing page that has a video on the side and two buttons on top of each other, and then the information is split into two different columns. Now, the question that always comes to mind is, which design is better? And you have to always define what better means. If better means that you need to get to the next page faster for a person, like the person who will take the study, or person who will create the study, then you need to start figuring out which part of which part of that page will get that person to the next step faster. In this case, some of the times I probably don't know. And if I have time and if I have resources, I might design both pages and split test with a tool like Optimizely or Visual Web Optimizer. And I've done that a lot with Kinotopia. But in the beginning, if this is like your first or second product, if you don't have experience with design, I would say pick one design that you think is good enough and go for it, or show both these sketches or prototype both these pages and have users look at them and tell you which one would help them take action faster. So give one page to the user, tell them what would you do in this screen, give them the other page, what would you do in that screen, and figure out what kind of screen is less confusing for them. What I do usually with my products is I launch with one screen because I want to launch soon. I don't want to get into the paralysis of analysis. So I'll pick one of those screens, the one that I have the information and the gut feeling that would perform better, but I'll keep that screen as a potential A/B test. And after launching the product and starting getting some traffic, I'll start testing these screens against each other through a tool that would give me more information about the engagement and the clicks. So how do you best validate your design as you're creating them? So for example, when I'm doing the detailed screens here, I would always go back to that flow diagram that I created earlier that describes to me how each user will go through the system from one step to another. And I will validate these screens against these steps all the time. So when I create the high-level sketches, I'll go back and I say, I will have that flow diagram printed or on a tablet next to me and say, okay, this is how the person will move from this screen from the main screen to the sign-up screen. I want to make sure there is a sign-up button here. The person from the list of studies need to be able to view a specific study and apply to it. So I'm going to make sure there is a view study button next to each study, and there is an apply button next to each study. And this is how I'm basically validating each design or each step in the design with the previous step, because the previous step is the foundation on which this current step was created. So I always do this walkthrough validation here where I'm trying to figure out, did I miss something? Is there a screen that's missing? Is there a feature that's missing? Is there a transition in the information architecture of the website that is preventing me from going from one step to another, preventing the user from reaching the next step? So after doing all these validations on my own, it's time for me to figure out, okay, now that I created all these designs, how do I make sure that users are actually liking that design or being able to use it? So I take, usually depending on if you're a technical person or if you have a technical co-founder, can you build something and test it with users? Or if you're not, can you take that Keynote prototype that you created and give it to someone and see how they use it? So I can tell that Marcus is telling me that the screen has a blur. If you guys are experiencing any, by the way, when I say guys, I mean guys and girls and ladies and everyone. If you're seeing some blur on the screen, let me know. I'm gonna try probably to move the screen or to move between these slides a little bit slower. But I want to give you a little bit of advice about user testing because I've done a lot of user testing. When you're testing something with users, the best thing to do is to have 2 or more things to test. And the reason for that is, one, you don't usually want users to give you feedback about your work, or your effort or your design, but you want them to give you feedback about the product itself, what works better about one design or another. And the second reason, when you give people 2 designs, they are much better at telling you what's better about each prototype or each screen or each UI than they are tell you. If you give them one, tell them, okay, what doesn't work about this, they might freeze. They might not know what exactly doesn't work about it. So have more than one prototype to show people and test with them. Don't rely on your own kind of intelligence or your own gut feeling about what design works and what design doesn't. If you can prototype more than one solution, the more the better. Give people multiple options and tell me what you liked about each of them. The second one, as you're going to work with users and test things with them, make sure they know that you're testing the product. You're not testing them. You're not telling them, you're going to do this wrong or do this right. Make sure they understand if there's something wrong they're doing, if there is something they're not figuring out, it's your mistake that you need to fix in the product. The final thing about user testing is that you need to know what you're actually testing. Are you testing time to finish a task? Are you testing the engagement with the product? How much time are you spending in the screen? So in some products, spending too much time on a screen is if it's a productivity tool and people need to move from one screen to another, then you need to measure the less time they spend on a screen, the better. But if it's a social product, for example, then you're measuring engagement, then spending more time in each screen is actually better. The second thing you need to know is what kind of things are you changing in order, or in going in a scientific way. There is the independent variable and there's the dependent variable. The independent are the things you're changing, and the dependent are the things you're measuring. So you're changing one thing from a screen to another. So going back to that landing page example that we have here, I have one layout and I have another layout, and so the independent variable is the location of of the buttons on the screen, for example. That's an independent variable. That's what I'm changing. But what I'm testing is how long will it take each type of user to go into the page they're supposed to go to. They figure out, oh, this button is for me, this step is for me, this click is for me. So I'm changing something, and I'm measuring something else, and it's important for you to know what are you changing and what are you measuring. The final thing about user testing is after you do the tests, don't let the users go away without asking them some qualitative questions, some survey questions. Sit down with them and ask them, what do they think could have been done better in one screen or another? What did they enjoy most about using it? What they hated the most about using it? Make sure you get all the feelings associated with using your product or your prototype, because that's going to help you not only know which feature you need to change, but why do you need to change them. There is a method that I use always with users while I'm testing the prototypes with them, and it helped me a lot, more than anything else, which is I always ask the users while I'm giving them the prototype to play with. I'm telling them, tell me what's going on in your head. Tell me what you think you will do in this step. I'm asking them to think out loud, so I can not only see what they're doing, but I'm also listening to how they're thinking. So the user will tell me, for example, oh, I'm here on the landing page and I think I need to click on the button on the left, but I also have this button on the right, and I'm reading this and I'm not sure which button now I need to click on. So now the user verbalized their thoughts for you, and that's very, very powerful, because if you don't tell them to tell you what they're thinking, you might be misled by them taking one action that, they're taking the action. You think they're taking the right action, but they may not in their heads thinking that's the right action to take. So that's a brief about user testing, and that's basically after you're getting the results from user testing. If you have a team, the best thing to do is to go and summarize these moments from the user tests and show them to your team and give them the feedback and work together on getting the next iteration of the prototype working, so you go and test it again. If you're on your own, then it's time to go and summarize all these feedback points that you got from users. There is a magical way that I figure out how many users I need to test the product with. And I think it was Alan Cooper who wrote About Face, which is one of the great books on UI design. It's really, really thick book. It's, I think, about 1,000 pages or so. And what he says is you need to do as many tests as possible so that you can start getting predictable feedback. Once you start hearing the same feedback from users, you know you had enough tests run, and you need to go back and incorporate that feedback into the next iteration of your prototype. So if everyone is telling you about that page, oh, I don't know, I think I should click on the left, but that thing on the right is now confusing me, then you know that this is a time to change that layout for your prototype. So from these user stories, going back to doing your iterations and going back to users and testing them again, and you stop testing once you have something that people can go through quickly, efficiently, and enjoyably. I'm going to give you quick do's and don'ts about what to do and what not to do in the design process. Just 5 things that I think are very essential for any person creating a product to know. The first thing is, don't make up the actual user stories. Don't sit down and imagine someone having a problem. Go and talk to people. Your user stories, the ones you write about the existing situation of the user, should actually come from the users themselves, not from some some area in your head or from your imagination or from reading about the problem. As many stories as you can collect from people is better. The next side of the story, which is the reimagined story of the user with your solution, is basically what you're gonna be able to come up with from your imagination. But the first type of stories, always get them from users. The second one, which I mentioned earlier today, don't get stuck too much in the detail. Don't try to design the sketches with enough detail in the beginning, because you need to take that top down. You need to have it first done with a thick marker and then a thinner marker and then add more detail. Don't get stuck in the detail too early. But also the flip side of that, don't ignore the detail later on in the process. So the more you get into refining the product, you need to take care of every detail of it. But if you're taking care of every detail very early on, then you're either going to be too slow, or you're gonna run out of steam before you actually release any product. And the most important thing, don't skip steps for the design process. In that design, the more you get the foundation right, the more you figure out the problem and then jump into the solution correctly, the more the solution will be correct for that problem. The more you build every step on top of the other, the less mistakes you will have. A lot of people, they have an idea, they sit down, they sketch it, and then they prototype it. It might work, but this is a gamble. This is kind of like a lottery. If you want to build it right, you have to build it step by step, and don't skip each step. Don't skip any step. And as you're going through each step, always validate with the previous step. So if I'm doing the screen design, I validate each screen design or each screen sketch by going through the user flow and validating the transition between one step in the flow to another. I want to make sure that this screen can enable users to log in, so I need a login button. I want to make sure that this screen will enable users to create a new account, so I'm going to create a new account button on that screen, and so on. So each step is used to validate the step after it. And finally, there's this myth about the designer being an uber creative person who sits down in the lab or in their office and they come up with the best designs for people, and then the product's launched and it's amazing. It's an amazing one. That's not entirely true. It's better to design with people than to design for people. It's better to have this kind of relationship for people helping you with your design. Don't go and just get information from people and then launch the product later. Include them in the design process, include them into the prototype testing, ask them questions, have your own mastermind group from users, have your own creative group. You might have noticed I sent out an email a while back, actually only a few weeks ago, but for product managers specifically, because there is a new product that I'm working on, and I'm creating this mastermind group of users that I want to think with, I want to include in the design process, and that's helping me a lot on not only understand them, but bounce ideas with, and actually helping me come up with a lot of good ideas for the product. So figure out what your audience is. Do you know already someone who's kind of like one of the mastermind group people you can have? Collect 5-10 people and bounce ideas with. I know that there's a trend of not doing focus groups, but I believe a lot more in mastermind groups than in focus groups. Have your focus groups of users, or have your mastermind group of users. Don't wait until you have a design to show them sketches, show them requirements, figure out what's more important for them, and keep the conversation with them. You're creating a product with people rather than for people, and that's a lot more powerful. So I'm really good on time now. I'm very impressed with myself because it's 7:59 now, and I'm seeing a couple of questions here on Twitter. So the first one is when you say prototype, that's from Callan. Hey, Callan. When you say prototype, are you talking about a functional web page? Callan, the prototype can be anything. Can be basically a functional web page, can be a Keynote prototype, can be a PDF on an iPhone that people are going through. So prototype can include anything that lets the user interact with. Adrian is asking if there are any discounts today. Okay, Adrian, hang out a little bit more, a couple minutes, and you'll see we have a couple of surprises here for you guys. So the next step for you guys, I want you to take these 7 steps and go through them for your product, and I'll probably do like another webinar in a couple of weeks. I really want to see some prototypes that you guys created. I want to critique some of them. I want to give you some feedback about them. Probably invite a couple of you on a hangout and have the others see how I'm doing critique on each prototype. I want you to know that I also have an expanded course that I've created that basically takes this method and dives a lot more into each step. And this course is available on http://kenotopia.com/ux. Now, traditionally, this course, and again, this course has been up for 2 years. It's been more than 2,000 students took this course, and I've been hearing amazing results from them. So this course works. It's the method that I've used to apply to create all these 13 different products for different startups that got acquired, and it worked for me and it worked for others. Now, because you guys took the time to stay and hang out with me today here in the webinar, I'm giving you an offer for the next 3 days. So basically until Valentine's Day. So today is Wednesday, so Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Until the end of Valentine's Day, and by the way, do not forget your significant other on Valentine's Day. They really get pissed off if you do. So remember, Friday is Valentine's Day, and Friday is also this offer expires. So if you go to bit.ly/key offer, KEY offer, I basically created basically 3 bundles for you guys. If you're new to Kenotopia, you haven't gotten it yet, I'm creating a little discount for people who want to get Keynote for the Kenotopia prototypes for Keynote and PowerPoint for basically almost 30% off here. So it's almost $100 instead of $150. That's if you know how to do the design process and you're a really good designer and you just need the prototypes. But I've also been asked several times to kind of bundle the templates that we have along with the UX course. And I've thought about creating this today. I actually created this a couple weeks ago for another webinar that I gave to a different group. And this Kenotopia Pro Bundle has been probably the best-selling product we've had on this webinar so far. So this would include the UX course that you just saw. The UX course is typically $200, and the Kenotopia templates typically $150, and then our UI patterns, which is plug-and-play screens for Keynote and PowerPoint that you can use to design your screens right away. So instead of designing things one component at a time, you can just plug in an activity feed stream or a user profile screen, and you can just plug it in right away. So it's going to save you a significant amount of time. It's based on the top-selling apps on the App Store. And so this bundle includes all these, and it's almost half priced. It's less than half price today. Now, there's another bundle that I've been toying with. This is kind of an experiment, so I want to help people do their prototypes better. So I'm going to personally give a critique to 10 people. I'm not opening this because I'm not opening this to everyone because I don't have time to really, between working on Kenotopia and working on the new product I'm working on, I only have time for 10 people a month to do this with. But if you have a prototype that you want me to critique, or if you have an existing product that you want me to do a review for, or look at together and tell you what you need to improve at, the third bundle, which is the VIP bundle, is the best one for you. And again, the URL for this one is bit.ly/keyoffer, bit.ly/keyoffer. And actually, I was contacted by 2 amazing companies in the past couple of weeks, and they wanted to offer people some additional bonuses for this specific webinar. So the first company is called Envision, and if you haven't heard of Envision, go check it out. What they do is they help you host your prototype online and make it clickable online, so you can have it on your phone, you can have it on the web, and you can share it with others online. They can give you feedback, they can highlight what kind of things didn't work for them. You can share it with your team and tell them, annotate it and tell them what to do in each step. So Envision is one of them, and user testing is another. Now, user testing, what they do is they allow you to put your product in front of real people and get and see feedback from them. The reason I'm mentioning these 2 companies is that if you get the Pro bundle today or the VIP bundle, I'm also including 3 free, or they're offering you guys 3 free months at Envision. That's not the free plan they have, that's actually the starter plan. So I think each month is worth $15. And user testing, they're offering 3 free tests. That's probably $150 value for that. They're offering 3 free tests to anyone who's going to buy any bundle today. And this means that when your product is done, when you have a landing page, they actually give you feedback from they put it in front of 3 real users, and they allow you to get feedback from them and know what worked and what didn't. They even give you videos of these people interacting with your product. So Envision will be very valuable for you to get to share your prototypes with other people and get feedback and comments about them. And user testing, once you have your landing page, once you have your product page done, they allow you to put it in front of 3 users and get that feedback for free. So I'm including these guys as an offer here for the Pro bundle and the VIP bundle. If you're interested, they'll help you out along your process. So I think we have probably another 9 minutes to look at questions if you want to hang out, and I'm going to answer them from Twitter now. So Stephen asking, what if we already have the Kenotopia bundle? Stephen, probably if you have Kenotopia bundle, then the best deal for you is to get the UX course from kenotopia.com/UX. That's the UX course only. Callan is asking, if an existing prototype exists already, is taking shape, what's the best way to retrospectively take the approach? So this is a good question. So the way I would take a prototype and figure out how to improve it to work with existing users or an existing product. So if you have a Keynote prototype, what I would do is that I would still do this exercise on the side, but I would do it much faster because you have existing screens. So I might start, in your case, Callan, I might start by doing the flow diagrams. So you have your screens. I'm going to start taking them one level up. So I'm going to go from the low level of the prototype, a higher level, to doing the flow diagrams, and I'm going to do a walk through these flow diagrams and trying to figure out where is it breaking, what kind of states are missing from these screens. It might, if you're doing some testing with these prototypes and you're finding that it's really far off from what users want, or it's not performing, or users are not liking it, then maybe it's time to throw away this prototype and start from scratch. And I do this a lot, by the way. Sometimes I take one design direction and I follow it and I'm very excited about it, but I realized after testing it with users that's not the right direction. And the reason we have all these Keynote templates that I'm working with and I'm giving to you guys is it's very, very quickly and very cheaply validated. So you don't, in the past people used to build like products and pages that would take them 15, 20 days, 30 days to build. Here you can actually spend just 1 day building a new prototype and go and test it. So don't feel bad about throwing away your prototype right now. It's better than getting attached to it, building a product and really realizing no one wants to use it. So don't get attached to it. Thanks guys for the feedback. If you have any feedback, if there is anything that you need me to cover in the webinar that I haven't, send me a tweet right now. I'll be on Twitter for the next 5 minutes here. If I missed anything, if there is a question that I haven't answered, probably in the next few weeks as well, I'm going to start releasing a lot of samples and examples. So if you're on the mailing list, you probably got that new example that I tried, which is the Facebook Paper app, the iPhone app that they released, because they did like the Quartz Composer plugin. They were graceful enough to share the code and the plugins with people, but I found it a lot faster to do a sample prototype in Keynote. It actually took me less than 10 minutes to do it in Keynote. And I'm going to launch this sample for you guys. I'm going to include it probably in one of those bundles so you can download it and play with it. The video is available online. If you go to, if you search Kinotopia Origami or Kinotopia Facebook Paper app, you'll get to that video. Watch it, and it's a very good introduction on how I think about these interactive apps in Keynote. If you guys have any more questions on Twitter, again, I'll be hanging out the next couple minutes. Otherwise, I'm grateful for you to join me tonight. It's been a lot of fun for me, and I hope it's useful for you guys. If you're curious about getting more insights into my UX process, this UX course that I have here is probably around 4 hours total, and I really dig deep into each step, and I give you the right action steps for you to take in each step to follow along with me to do with your own product. So check it out. Again, everything here comes with 30-day money-back guarantee. So even if you download the course, you download the templates, you do the exercises in the course, and it doesn't work for you, just let me know. I'll refund your money back. It's not a big deal. And everything here comes with lifetime updates. So if you're whenever any new iOS launches, any Android launches, any new operating system, you're covered. You're basically gonna get everything in the future for free. All right, so I think this is a wrap for us. Thank you guys for hanging out today. I'll send you a link to the recording of this webinar later on, so you can check it out. You can review it later. Have a great night, guys. Bye.